Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I want to talk to you about episode 2 of season 1 of the book of Boba Fett. It was called Tribes of Tatooine. And as it begins, we see that with the help of his protocol droid, who it would seem is the torture droid 8D8 from Return of the Jedi, voiced in this case by the great Matt Berry from What We Do in the Shadows. Fett interrogates the captured assassin from the Order of the Nightwind that tried to kill him along with his compatriots, but he won't talk. So he gets sent down to the Rancor pit and kind of poops his space pants before confessing that the mayor sent him, which is what Boba Fett wanted to know, after which he's told there actually is no Rancor, which of course is the case because it was killed in Return of the Jedi, which disappointed me because I thought perhaps there'd be a new Rancor and we would see it, but no. Anyway, Fett then goes to see the mayor, who is a hammerhead, and who tells him he didn't send the guy, before killing the guy and paying Fett a bounty for him, which Fett accepts as the mayor's tribute that he didn't pay when his emissary first visited the palace. At which point, he tells Fett where he might find out who really sent the guy. Fett is then confronted, when he goes outside, by 2 twin cousins of Jabba's, carried in on a platform, complete with the little bowl of frog-type snack creatures, just like in Jabba's palace in Jedi, who threaten him with a Wookiee bounty hunter, whose name I'm going to mangle, but I think it's Black Kurstan, from the Star Wars comics, and who want Jabba's throne, only for Fett to tell them they'll have to kill him for it. They decide to beg off for now, saying they'll be back later, at which point Fennec tells Fett he'll have to get permission to kill them since they're Hutts. We then flash back to Fett's time with the Sand People, and we see him training with them before the camp is attacked by some people on a sand train. As night falls after that, the Sand People burn their dead, and the attackers seem to return on speeders. They kind of drive by, prompting Fett to go off to deal with the train, after which he comes upon a bar where some ruffians are menacing some patrons who seem to be Cammy and Fixer, Luke's friends whom he sees and hangs out with at Tosche Station in a deleted scene from A New Hope, which may in fact be where this scene takes place. It might also be Tosche Station. And of course, Boba Fett kicks the ruffians' asses before stealing all of the speeders by tying them all together and riding one of them, dragging the other ones behind. At which point, he takes them to the camp. At which point, he tells the Sand People to teach them how to ride the speedsters and how to stop the train. And then they all practice riding them and jumping between them. And it was kind of funny because they keep falling off before they actually go after the train, which actually led to a cool action sequence where they attack the train from the speeders and eventually board it, which also led to a cool action sequence. And Fett does eventually take control of the train, taking its remaining crew members captive, meaning the ones they didn't kill in the process, and learning from them that they're carrying spice from the slave mines of Kessel, which we saw in Solo, and which of course are the subject of the famous Kessel Run quote from A New Hope, before informing them that the Sand People are the ancestral people of the Dune Sea, that area of Tatooine, and that if their trains want to travel through there on business, which Jabba probably wouldn't have allowed if he were alive, they'll have to pay a toll every time to the Sand People, and that if they hurt any of the Sand People by their actions will be returned on them tenfold. So Fett's basically a badass. He then sends them on their way on foot to go back to their syndicate and deliver the terms that he just outlined. Later, around a campfire, the Sand People give Fett a gift of a lizard-type thing, which jumps up in his nose, and which I guess is supposed to act as some kind of a guide, like a voice in his head. and to, sort of put him on, to give him visions and put him on a sort of vision quest, which he then goes on and seems to have, he seems to sort of see some things that maybe, or that are there maybe, but he sees them a little differently than they're actually, they actually are. And he's also having flashbacks at the same time to different times in his life. And it sort of seems to merge his past and his present, as the Dune Sea becomes the sea of his homeworld, and a tree that he approaches, which has a smaller tree next to it, might sort of symbolize, according to one video by Screen Crush, his family tree, himself and his father, the death of whom he flashes back to during this. At one point, it seems like the tree has different sets of eyes peeking out from it that, again, according to Screen Crush, could represent the Jawas, their beady little eyes, because they stole his armor from him. And his armor, of course, is his family heritage. And this, of course, occurred after he got out of the pit. And speaking of the pit, the Vision Quest tree thing, or the Vision Quest that he's on, seems to try to consume him, the tree does, physically, or at least he's perceiving it that way. Much like, would have happened to him in the Sarlacc pit if he hadn't gotten out. And during this sequence of the tree kind of devouring him, you also see, him stuck in the pit. And so they're paralleling it visually. After all this, he returns to camp with a branch from the tree, at which point the lizard leaves his head through his nose and goes back in its box. And Fett is seemingly inducted into the Sand People tribe, like formally, which included giving him his own set of robes and helping him mold his own gaffy stick from the branch that he brought back. Afterwards, he joins them in a fireside ceremonial soldier-type dance, not entirely dissimilar to the kind of ceremonial dances we might see being done by different tribes on different continents or various continents in real life, including, of course, those of the Malawans, to whom the actor playing Boba Fett, Tamora Morrison, is, of course, connected, being a New Zealander. So I have to say, I think this is very cool. I think it's very cool that we're seeing more about the Sand People in the show, just like it was cool how we saw a little bit more about them in The Mandalorian. Up to this point, they were really, okay, I have to sort of differentiate here. Up to this point, we really had only seen them, as it concerns live action, in A New Hope. And then we saw them briefly in The Phantom Menace. They've been seen a lot more in some of the extended universe, the novels, the comic books, and so forth, but I don't have any knowledge of those things. I didn't keep up with those things. So for me, and for anyone else who's just sort of a mass media Star Wars consumer or mainstream Star Wars consumer, the movies and shows, this is really cool that we're getting for the first time this look at the Sand People, this in-depth look. And it's certainly cool that it's live action versus how it's been done in other media in the past. And, and it very much seems like the writers have decided that the Sand People have a rich history that's worth showcasing on this show. And again, to the wider audience that, I don't know if that's wider, maybe it's narrower, the more narrow audience that only consumes the live action stuff. And, like I said, I think it's great. In A New Hope, they're sort of depicted as a tribe of bandits or thieves or marauders. And then, like I said, we saw them briefly in the prequels, but, there we do actually get, because I guess they're in the episode 3 as well. I came to see them a little bit more sympathetically after their appearance in episode 3. Because the reason for that is that, Anakin murders a whole bunch of them in revenge for what happened to his mother. And it kind of played off like, wow, what a horrible thing. He just went and slaughtered a bunch of Sand People. So they're depicted kind of like, okay, yeah, they kind of are marauders or whatever, but you just went and murdered a bunch of them. So I came to see them a little bit more sympathetically there. So I think it's great that we're now getting this depiction. It's very akin to what Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, respectively, did with the Klingons and to a lesser extent the Romulans during their respective runs, and really even the Cardassians, who were, of course, first introduced in Next Gen, and they were kind of one-dimensional in that, the Klingons were as well. And that massively changed over the course of the run of Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. So, and it was very cool, and I think this is likewise cool. Speaking of the Sand People, by the way, am I the only one who wants to know what Sand People look like under the helmet mask thing? Like, I Googled it, and there's really nothing that I could find that, really gives you there's kind of some descriptions, but nothing visual. So I kind of would like to see that. But, I think the show is great. I really do, even 2 episodes in. And it's kind of sad because a bunch of people have been dismissing it pretty much out of hand since the first episode for various reasons. But I think they're missing a lot, which I have to admit is also the case with myself, because as I said, I didn't keep up with the extended Star Wars universe, the comic books and the novels and games and stuff. And I barely kept up with some of the animated stuff, most of which I've forgotten, even though I really liked it. Like, in other words, I've seen the original Star Wars films numerous times. I've seen the prequels rather, at least once each, and I've seen parts of them repeatedly. I've seen the sequels at least once each. I think I've seen The Rise of Skywalker twice. I may have seen that twice as well as The Last Jedi. But anyway, I don't remember those things, the things that happened in those films and the things that happened in the animated series that I watched, as well as I remember the stuff that happened in the first 3 films and maybe the prequels, to the extent that when Bo-Katan shows up on The Mandalorian, I'd forgotten who that was, even though I'd seen her arc on the animated show that I watched. So I've forgotten a lot of stuff that I've seen from the extended universe, which in my case is mostly the animated stuff. And a lot of the stuff, I guess, from the animated show, from the comics, is being built upon on these new shows. And that's probably going to continue, but I only know that it's even happening because I watched a video by Screen Crush. So I think anybody else who doesn't know that this is happening, that they're bringing in all this rich stuff, from the extended universe, is missing out if they dismiss this show. The other thing is that it's obvious now after the second episode, more than it was from the first episode, that they're building a parallel between Boba Fett's rise from prisoner to a sort of leader among the Sand People and then a member of the tribe, and his continued rise to the top of the crime world, or the crime lord world, in the more present day sequences of the show, which of course is after his time with the Sand People. On the whole, I think it's great what they're doing with the Boba Fett character. I think about it this way. He's a guy who was in like 2 scenes in 2 movies for like 2 minutes, who didn't say much of anything, around whom a whole lot of lore has been built up over the years, again, in the extended universe, mostly, that not everybody kept up with. And I think it's great that they're sort of bringing that to the other part of the Star Wars fandom and building him out in an even more 3-dimensional way for that audience than just the part of the audience that kept up with the extended universe. They started doing this in The Mandalorian when, he shows up and basically explains very briefly who he is and what he's about to the Mandalorian. And I think it all helps explain why the guy that was depicted in the movies as a sort of sociopath or psychopath and a cutthroat bounty hunter killer, apparently now wants to rule through respect rather than fear, which some have said is completely antithetical to the way he was depicted in the films. Now we know why. Not that we really needed to know why, because the whole point of having characters and telling stories is, so that the audience can watch characters evolve. But anyway, I think this is all, great. I think it all points to the possibility that this show could end up being even better than The Mandalorian. In fact, I'm kind of liking how it stays in one place. Like, it's in 2 different time periods, but it's all on Tatooine. And it's very much different from The Mandalorian in that The Mandalorian was very have gun will travel. He was chasing his tail the whole time, or chasing, not so much his tail, but like chasing clues or chasing different. He was putting out different fires every episode. Okay, I'm in this position. I'm trying to put myself in this position. So to do that, I have to go here. And, when he gets there, he's told, okay, well, if you want to accomplish this, then you first need to accomplish that. So it's like, okay, to get from A to B, he has to solve, like A1 and then B1, and then he can get to B. Like, it was just very, I don't know. It was like watching someone complete a grocery list. And then it was repeated every week. This is different. So the narrative is not so perfunctory. It's more of a, I don't know, it seems like more of a story to me than just watching someone complete tasks. You know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed The Mandalorian, but I think the show is shaping up to be a better show, and I look forward to it, every episode. If you're someone that hasn't really thought much of it, it might be because you're not familiar with a lot of things that I wasn't familiar with, and you might want to watch some YouTube videos that explain a lot of it, or, I don't know, look up Boba Fett and the Sand People, and what was done with those characters in the extended universe, and you might enjoy the show more. But I think you're missing out if you don't watch the show. That's really it. I'll be back with a review of the next episode once it is released. Until then, I wish you all peace and long life.